in terms of framing or narrative.
Hi, so this is another video where we're going to be looking at a communications campaign and breaking it down for what activists might be able to learn from it. I'm Walker-Konno, I'm a communications coach for activists, and I'm really happy to have Michael Braithwaite with us, who's a narrative strategist specialising in visual culture and social impact. She's the co-founder of Next Big Thing, which works at the intersection of narrative and culture to form common ground among unlikely groups and surface new narratives that move us all towards an ethical and thriving future. And I was particularly keen to have you on, Michael, because you work on both narrative, but also you have a culture sector background. So today's sort of topic was perfect for us. Do you want to kick us off and sort of tell us what we're talking about?
Sure, yeah. So we're going to be talking about Little Amal, which was part of this large multi-country arts festival called The Walk. And Little Amal is a 3.5 meter, just about 11.5 feet tall puppet that is meant to represent a 9-year-old girl who is a refugee moving from country to country on her way to the UK.
What were your original reactions when you saw this sort of project, this initiative last year, right? Last summer to autumn.
Yeah. I think it was early autumn, late summer. So my initial reaction with the headline was I was just really excited. I thought, oh, this is a really innovative sort of approach to addressing, what goes on with refugees, sort of what the path from their home countries to, wherever they're trying to seek refuge might look like. And so I just thought it was a cool way to blend experiential arts with advocacy and human rights. And then when I actually sort of dove into looking at it, my immediate sort of visual reaction was just to her physicality, and I just got sort of immediately freaked out. The size of her and something about the movements that puppets just have to make just kind of sparked the uncanny valley effect for me. Conceptually, I thought it was really cool. Visually, immediate reaction was just, oh, this freaks me out. If I saw this coming down the street, I would be more apt to run in the other direction than I would to sort of engage with it and figure out what it was that was going on.
And it's completely legitimate to have a visceral reaction, right? And maybe discover a puppet phobia that you didn't know you had before.
Yeah, was not aware that I was scared of puppets. Now I know.
And so when you then engaged your critical faculties after having had your emotional gut reaction to it, how did you feel about it then?
I was just a little bit disappointed. I think I was so excited that someone had tried this really innovative form and this really innovative concept, like the idea of a nearly 12-foot tall puppet walking from, I believe it was Gaziantep, Turkey, which is right on the Syrian border, all the way through to Manchester, UK. I was like, that's an incredible opportunity for so many people in real life to sort of physically engage with this issue and with the stories of refugees, particularly refugee children. And then when I got into the sort of, I suppose, more kind of like narrative or advocacy framing of the project, I was a bit disappointed to see that there was nothing new there. So the project itself on the homepage, notes that the scale of the puppet was so that the world could grow big enough to embrace her. The objective was to sort of show the potential of refugees, which I'm always a little bit wary of this kind of potential framing as though they're not human beings. It's like they're projects that need to be sort of hewn into something that's good for the society that they're coming into, which is a little capitalist-y. I don't know. It just feels a little bit kind of patronizing. So it just reproduced all of the same discourse and sparked all of the same feelings that sort of everyone's attempts already have. And that played out from country to country to country. So if you were already, compassionate towards the cause, people reacted with compassion. If you felt threatened by the notion of refugee resettlement and migration, then that's what they got. And so I think it just felt a bit like a missed opportunity to me, where it was like, oh, a really visually dynamic and conceptually innovative approach to storytelling and community engagement, but not backed with anything new in terms of framing or narrative or sort of emotional leverage, I guess. And so I was a little bit disappointed because it felt like, a ton of resources went into reproducing the same things that happened with headlines on the subject.
Yeah, and I think sort of looking at the sort of like the press coverage, first it got a lot of press coverage, and if secondhand retelling of a stunt is the main way that a stunt has impact, right? Then I would say the kind of outlets that it was in and some of the messaging that was there was quite effective. But then it was telling that that one Guardian article, which I can show on screen, that quoted an organizer that some of those negative reactions you mentioned were kind of a reenactment of the attitudes displayed to real refugees.
Yeah.
And so that might be, maybe this is a sort of, is this a typical culture sector kind of approach to things, which is that if you have an element of impact, or if you have emotional engagement, even if it's negative, or if it's striking, then that equals impact rather than social change impact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make a sweeping statement for the entire culture sector, but I think so. I mean, that's something that I've seen again and again with a lot of artists that want to make socially impactful work, is that, and this makes sense, right? Like they create visually, so their priorities are in the visual realm. They're looking for form and function and things that are visually striking. And I think that, on the one hand, is an incredible strength of that sector. You know, theater, public theater is an unbelievable way to engage people and to get people sort of out of their cognitive ruts. Same with visual art, you know, puppetry, installation. All of these things are really amazing ways to hook people and draw people in and sort of tap curiosity and a sense of wonder and awe. But again, if you don't connect that to what can actually facilitate not even a long-term change in someone's thinking, because I think that's really difficult to do with just a one-off experience with a giant puppet or an installation piece. But if you don't sort of do the research around cognitive science, behavioral science, to understand how your visual form is or is not reinforcing what already exists and has failed, then ultimately the project is going to make a big splash. It's going to be really exciting. People are going to say, oh, wow, what a stunt, right? But the stunt is just going to reproduce the same cognitive pathways.
I might ask about that missed opportunity then. So there's sometimes is a little bit of, in a kind of migration activism community, a bit of either snobbery or fatigue with people who, in that kind of high point of 2015, went to Calais or went to Lampedusa or a Greek island, and then sort of like realized I could just save this crisis by either, if they're an artist, doing some spoken word poetry, or if they're an entrepreneur, developing a new type of recyclable water bottle. But we do always say we would like people from different kind of backgrounds to just politics and international studies and human rights law to do this kind of work, right? So what would good cultural activism, social science collaboration look like on these kinds of work, or in different topics?
Honestly, I think it wouldn't look too terribly different from what the Walk tried to do. I think it would just look like a larger multi-sector collaboration, because I should have prefaced this all by saying I don't know how to do like a multi-country incredible theater piece that permanently impacts people's thinking and feelings on migration and refugees. I don't know. We didn't do the sort of standard disclaimer, which is that we're doing backseat driving here. We don't know whether they maybe did see sort of loads of super rigorous data that told them that this is the best thing to do. Totally.
And actually, we don't know what we're talking about.
No, I've never tried to do anything on this scale, and there's some well-known quote out there about how it's always easier to be a critic than a creator. And so certainly like caveat with that. But I think part of the reason I was so disappointed about the project is because I initially was like, this is what we need. You know, like the thing it did really well is bring people out, you know, like regardless of the narrative stuff and the framing stuff and, I wish they had partnered with sociologists, blah, blah, blah. They got little kids, they got families, they got people just walking by. They had, as you said, an amazing amount of splash. It got a lot of coverage. They got the Pope, you know. So I think in terms of connecting with all kinds of different people, which is what campaigners always say that they want to do, and then often just end up connecting with the choir, as we say here in the States, like preaching to the choir. I think that unlike what advocacy campaigns usually do, which is just end up in the same camp over and over again and sort of just speak to one another, this really did, because it was a gigantic, personally terrifying, but curiosity invoking for other people puppet, like it got lots of demographics out and thinking about it and talking about it. And it wasn't just the puppet walking through, like there were entire theater pieces and installations that were really visually dynamic. Like on the one hand, I go, oh, it's a bummer that this reproduced the same discourse that's already been done. On the other hand, if I could have worked through my visceral fear, I would have loved to have seen this. Like, I think it would have been really cool. And the way, you know, that they used theater and the public square to really like pull people, all kinds of people in, I thought, for me, I was like, that's the dream. And had it just, you know, invoked something slightly different and not the same old in the background, visually and in terms of community engagement, I think it was incredible.